Thanks for staying here. Now, the poor will find it more difficult to get access to electricity if government goes ahead with the privatization of the Electricity Company of Ghana. This is the assessment of former UK diplomat Craig Murray, who also served as a Deputy High Commissioner to Ghana. He also said that the IMF and the United States of America are responsible for our current economic woes. Fred Smith has a copy of an article he wrote, and he's here with me in the studio. He'll share some highlights with us. What are the highlights of this article Craig wrote?
Well, Mr. Murray makes the point that 10 years ago, Ghana was producing the most reliable power. The supply was the most reliable on the continent. In fact, it had the highest percentage of households connected to the grid. And this includes South Africa. So you know how efficient VRA was at the time. But then Ghana went to the IMF for some assistance, and the conditionality was that we break up generation from supply. And that's how come we had GridCo in between, and we also had independent power producers also coming on board. What he says is that today our power generation is half what we were producing 10 years ago, and in spite of the inclusion of these IPPs and the break of the supply chain. He thinks that the United States and the IMF have this agenda to ensure that they siphon monies from the poor and to rich companies, mainly the United States companies, so they will be wealthier. And he's warning that if you're not careful and we go ahead with the privatization of the Electricity Company of Ghana, what will happen is that there will be more efficiency in revenue collection, which means that if you're a hospital and you delay in the payment of your electricity, what happens is that you are cut off, no mercy for you. And he thinks that it is the poor that's going to bear the brunt of this privatization.
He makes an interesting revelation also about the independent power producers, the fact that they contribute little and more. Give us some details.
In fact, he's saying that of all the independent power producers who are making the most of the money that's generated in the power sector, they contribute less than 20% of the total power generation. And so there's a disconnect there. Produce less but earn the most.
And he also diagnosed a problem going forward if we go ahead to privatize ECG.
The obvious thing is to reverse the decision to privatize, let it be in the hands of the ECG. Let's have one unified VRA that's more efficient so that it can provide the supplies that they were doing some 10 years ago.
Well, thank you very much, Fred. Fred brought us some highlights of Craig Murray's article he wrote on Ghana's energy sector, which he claims we should blame our current woes on the United States, or the World Bank and the IMF. We'll bring you some more on this in subsequent broadcasts. We'll digest this further. Time now for business. We'll start off with, well, the energy sector. The Africa Center for Energy Policy is calling for a legal framework on a comprehensive set of fiscal rules. Head of Policy Unit at ASAP, Ishmael Aka, explains this legal framework will help in the country's quest to achieve budget balance rules, expenditure growth rules, and debt rules that are targets under the IMF program.
When you look at the IMF deal, a lot has been said, and we are emphasizing on more petroleum revenues coming in. What we indicated was that petroleum revenues are volatile because, one, even though we may have some control over the quantity of petroleum we produce, we don't have control over price. And if price is low, what it means is that revenue will be down. So we should have more like a sustainable means of getting enough revenue than what we are projecting. That is one. And again, with the expenditure, yes, the government has indicated that certain portions of the budget will be cut, expenditure will be cut, but we believe that these are more like administrative procedures. So the IMF program is between 2015 and 2017. After 2017, what happens? Are we going back to our excesses? Are we going to spend more than we get, like what we're doing? So if we want this thing to be sustainable and that we won't go to IMF again, we should be able to back this thing by laws. So we should have, for instance, expenditure growth law, a debt law rule, or another route that will help us and guide us to spend within our means.
The Association of Ghana Industries is calling on government to put in place the necessary infrastructure to encourage businesses to operate effectively. Reacting to concerns that businesses evade taxes, Chief Executive of AGI, Chum Akwabwa, says the business environment does not encourage tax compliance. Well, that's it for the business segment. Sports is next to Kwame Jomo.